Yes. I'm gonna move us to Facebook. This morning it was being weird with me.
It does love to do that these days with all the changes they're rolling out.
I know. There. All right. Friends, we're back. I have Penny with me. Penny is like one of the most amazing people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in my life. I love her so much. And I'm so excited that she's here with me today. Penny, would you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do and what you're all about?
Oh, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm happy to have this conversation. I
Hmm.
think that you and I have a lot of mutual acquaintances, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm a board certified hypnotist. I was a nurse and nurse anesthetist for 25 years. So in 2019, I made a leap into business full time. So I was an employee going along and getting along for a very long time
Yep.
before I went into business. And I work with highly successful and motivated women, and yes, sometimes men who want to get out of the ordinary, mundane rut of life and get into extraordinary. So it's overcoming those beliefs, habits, and behaviors that really get us into our head and take us out of the game of life. So I help them to find that peace and that confidence and that authenticity that moves them forward so that they can create a life that they want. And that can look like whatever, right? It can be more about business, it can be personal, it can be relationships. And it's just really rewarding to see people come home to themselves. I'm also a certified professional hypnosis instructor, and I train others to be able to get life changing, transformative results for others.
I love this. I just love listening to you talk about what you do. Like you just have such a calming, beautiful presence. I just adore you. Tell me how you feel that your work has impacted the industry.
How my work has impacted the industry? That's a very good question. I don't do things the way that a lot of other hypnotists do. Most
Oh,
people that, they go in, they're doing sessions, they're charging by the session. My work is more of a blend of spirituality, hypnosis, and coaching. And when I say spirituality, I'm not pulling people into my belief system.
mm,
It's more about those universal principles that you can see across almost all faiths and philosophies
yeah.
that help us to go inward on our journey and really connect with our soul and our essence of who we are.
Mm,
So, for example, when I work with clients in my signature program, and I don't like to call it a program, but it's not by the session, right? It's really about that identity transformation. It's stepping into and having clarity, remembering who you are, and really embodying that by dismantling the indoctrination, the domestication, whatever it is that you want to call it, that we picked up as we grew up. So it's not just about overcoming the procrastination or just overcoming the people pleasing. It's about at your core, who
mhm.
do you really want to be? And we go for that full transformation in that process. And I think what has drawn me so much to this, because obviously it wasn't where I started,
Mhm.
it's been an evolution. I did a session with a client. She's been on my podcast a couple of times. And she came to me because she knew she was having issues with herself that were affecting her relationship with her partner. And she wanted
Oh,
to be a better partner. She had
mm,
two kids, one under a year and one who was about 3. And she didn't tell me this in the beginning. I didn't know. But after our third session together, we did some really deep emotional release work. She messaged me about an hour or two later. She goes, "You're not going to believe what happened." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "We finished with that session. I walked into the other room, and my 3-year-old, who has never told me he loved me and who is not a touchy feely child, ran up to me, leapt into my arms, and said, 'Mommy, I love you.'"
wow.
So that was 3 years ago. So over the
Chills.
course of 6 hours of work, we have fundamentally transformed not only her life, but her relationship with her child. And therefore, we have broken a generational cycle
Yes.
through over the entire lifetime. And this, my all my hair follicles, I got goosebumps all over. This is what motivates me to show up every single day. Some days
Mhm.
maybe not as strongly as others,
Well, hey, we're all
but I
human.
show up. Yes, we are. So yeah, it's that's where that was the catalyst to really dig deep into how to elevate the transformation for the people I work with.
Yeah. And like you and I worked together for some time. I know you have more stories like this, but
Oh yeah.
having that first big win for a client, it really does like fuel you. It fuels your belief, it fuels your passions. Like that's really fanning the flames here. Tell me what prompted you to like seek out working with me? Like how did I stand out to you?
So one of the things that had happened was my offer audience had transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was finding myself in this place of um, my offer was targeting a different audience, but I had my current audience in making that transition in how I talked about the challenges that people face. And I found my messaging straddle, I knew it was straddling the fence.
Mm.
And I just really loved the way that you talked about helping people to elevate that message. And there were some other elements in post of yours that I had seen that I just knew that I was lacking some clarity around the messaging that I needed. And I have to tell you, when you and I connected, I mean, there was more than one call you and I were together where I was just in tears because I think I was having a little bit of grief transitioning from one audience to the other because we don't like to leave anyone behind, right? But I knew I needed clarity. And, I think the most important thing that any of us can do is that when we realize that there's something that we need, and we know we're not going to be able to figure it out ourselves, is to hire that expert because it shortens the timeline.
Right.
If I hadn't hired you, I probably would still be in the same place I was last year with my messaging. And it's a practice for me. I used
Mm.
to write I shouldn't say I wrote academically, like I didn't write research articles and things like that, but for my school
Right.
training, and I got accustomed to writing in that lengthy, verbose, complex, compound sentence, walk the horse around the barn to make the damn point way. And some days I have to look at it and say, okay, what can I cut out of this?
Ah, yeah, that's amazing. Like I love your work, Penny, so much. I love the way you show up. I love the way you tell stories. I love listening to you. I think that that's one of the most beneficial, and maybe you would agree, aspects of our working relationship. So Penny and I work together privately is like everything that we talked about was all like focused on you and what makes your business unique. How do you feel like the strategies that we worked on together that were custom were like pivotal in addressing your business and your clients?
You helped me see the obvious that was right in front of me that I couldn't see,
Mm.
because you would ask me questions and we would start talking, and because I would come to you and say, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to communicate this, and you would start asking me questions, and then you would just be typing and brain dumping what I just said, and you're like, there's your post, go write it. And I'm like, can so sometimes I almost think I'm a verbal processor.
Mhm.
I think for me, it's not just your skill and how to shape things, because I have a story about something you said to me. If you want me to share it in a minute, I will. It's so funny because
Yes.
your voice stays in my head about it. But I'm a verbal processor. So the one on one connection was priceless in that you would ask me questions. And once I start verbally processing, it comes out. For me to process pen to paper, I mean, I can do it. It's not my best. It's not the way I flow the easiest, which is why I love to do Voxer with clients and voice messages. I'm like, please leave me a voice message so I can hear you and then verbally process back to you, because so much gets lost um, in text. So that's what I loved
Hmm.
specifically about our one-on-one work together, because for me, that was just gold.
Yeah, I love that. That's probably my favorite part is we can sit and you can talk to me for hours, but then you tell me that you don't know what to say. And I'm like, here's like 20
Guilty.
pages of things you can say. I want to hear this story, this funny story.
Uh, yeah. So one day I sent you over a post I had
Yep.
written, and you were busy, and I was like, you know what, I just want to post this, so I just go ahead and post it. And then I sent you the link to the post. I'm like,
Yep.
what do you think? And you're like, oh my gosh, you had me in tears. I'm going along, I'm in the story, I'm sucked in. Then you start to talk about the offer, and then nothing. You left me hanging. There's no climax. That plays in my head now. Every time I write a post, I go through, I'm like, okay, did I close my loop? Did I close my loop here?
Yeah.
And yeah, so your voice is always in my head. You left me hanging.
You left me hanging. Do you know what? That's a really common thing that people do. You know, you get really excited about the story and then you're like, and by the way, we can work together. Okay, bye.
Guilty.
That's okay. That's okay. That's the work that we do together.
Yeah, the other thing that I've done is I used to be one of these people, because so many times you write your post, I'm like, gosh, damn it, Brittany's calling me out again. Like, is she over on my Facebook feed? So you always talk about, you have to ask, right? You gotta show up, and you have to tell people. And I realized that before we worked together, I was trying to be slick or sly, and embed the offer, like, so that people wouldn't, so that people, because we can offer value and sell at the same time, but somewhere in my brain I could not hold those two things together. And I'm like, you just have to get over it. And I do make posts sometimes where I just flat out say, hey, I got this thing, come work with me. But it's because I know I have other content that fills in those gaps, because the algorithms are crazy. And if you're counting on the algorithm to show your stuff to people, you're going to be waiting. I have people commenting on something I put out 6 weeks ago.
Sweet.
So if I had just made that one post
Hmm.
and I never posted anything else, crickets, you know.
Yes, yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you're posting. And yeah, we get to be really bold and we get to be sassy and we get to be silly and do all of the things because it's a amalgamation of all of the things that we're doing all of the time and all the ways that we show up. So like we get to play and be ourselves and be bold and say what we want to say at any given moment. Like that's the beauty of it, of just like showing up and letting people see us. Were there any outcomes or anything about my process that was like surprising or unique to you?
I think that with your process, it's more just about being who you are. It's not necessarily about, you need this formula and this hook and this step by step. It was more about allowing it to flow,
Mhm.
which means it gets to feel more like me. So many people out there are, take my template, make my template, just fill in the blanks, use my template and put it out there. And then that stuff is not aligned. It doesn't sound like us.
Ah.
And so that's one of the things that I really, really liked about it. And, I was speaking earlier about audience
Mhm.
and who your audience is. When I took what we did and I started applying it to the hypnosis training, I didn't realize I had a whole hotbed of people that was exactly what they want, is the hypnosis training. So when I
Yeah.
took that and translated that over to that, and there's a reason why I'm marketing more heavily to training now than one-on-one, but um it was almost seamless. I guess, to just take it and bring that authenticity in and just that flow and the storytelling. And because the people were already there, um, it made it easier.
Yeah. It gets to be easy and it gets to be seamless and it gets to flow. I feel like sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, we can tend to overthink it. And I also think sometimes across the industry, and I mean this happens in hypnosis as well and in other things, sometimes terminology isn't necessarily standardized.
Mm.
And when one person talks about talking about a person's problem and another person talks about a person's problem, especially for me as a service provider, we get into, well, we know what the problem is. And so that was another part for me that you and I worked on, was disconnecting the symptoms from the problem.
Mhm.
And so I have to remind myself when I'm talking about what's the problem the person is experiencing. When I'm talking about the problem, I'm really not talking about the problem, I'm talking about the symptoms.
Ah, oh,
So
that's so good.
that was a huge distinction for me,
Hmm.
is that symptoms and problems. And I just pulled up the spreadsheet we worked on the other day, and I'm like, okay, I need to go back in here, brain dump in bunch more information. I'm literally going to take my voice memo app and I'm just going to brain dump. I'm going to get it transcribed and put it in there,
Put it in
because it's
there.
something about hands to keyboard. It's like, you know, and here I am, the hypnotist, and I'm saying that we speak our lives into existence, but it's more of a way that I process.
Mhm.
I just have to do what's easiest for me. And I love that you allowed for that process.
Yeah. Oh, I love to hear that. I'm so glad. Like I think a lot of people, and like you're a great example of this, where we're talking about like, well, we just talked and we were able to create content and offers and things like that. For a lot of these women that are just like you, that are high achieving women, like having someone just like hold the mirror up
Oh, yeah.
just makes all the difference. Just be like, oh yeah, hey, I do know what I'm talking about. I do know what I want to do. I do know what I want to say. But we get in our own heads.
Yeah. And that's when the communication can become confusing.
Hmm.
We get in our heads about it, and clarity becomes confusion. And I have hit that so many times. And I've learned, when I go on social media, I have to have on blinders, because I'm someone who's highly suggestible. So
Hmm.
when I get to scrolling, somebody will throw out a hook and it catches me, and I'm like, no, no, no. They're just trying to grab your attention to market. Keep going. Do not stop and listen. Stay in your lane.
Yes. Oh, see, this is why I tell people unfollow everybody. So you can get in and get back out. Thinking back to like when we first started working together, what would you say is like the number one like struggle or like point of contention that you were dealing with and grappling with that you were able to overcome because of our work together?
Really just using stories to communicate what I do, and to do it more effectively. Like I said, you said to me that time, you just left me hanging. And I was kind of slow on the uptake. I had a lot going on in my life when you and I started working together. I mean, there's a lot going on now, but I had a lot going on then, and I was in confusion. Like, I had to come out of that messaging confusion. And then once I started implementing, because I was kind of slow to get it, let's be honest. I probably wasn't the easiest person to work with in the beginning. Would you say that? Because
Oh.
it certainly felt that way to me, because I just had so much going on. But you were there. We kept pulling at the strings, getting it down, and then finally one day it just clicked for me. I had sent some things over and you said some things. I'm like, oh, okay. I get it. And it was that confusion in messaging. That's what I was struggling with, if you will. That's where I was at that point. So getting clarity around that. And I think the other thing, people talk about niching down so much.
Mm.
And one of my other things is, well, I can't, this was my thought process. I can't niche down because, my people have this core problem, but they're dealing with procrastination, or it might be people pleasing, or it might be self trust, or it might be self love, and people don't realize these things. And through our work together, that's one of the things that clicked was problem versus symptom,
Mm.
right? I mean, at the end of the day, what I help people to do is live a life that's more in alignment. But people who don't realize that all these things are caused by not being that in that life that's in alignment so that they can be in that extraordinary place, they don't know that. And I had listened to so many people and had gone back and forth. It was like, oh my God, you have to niche just in procrastination. I'm like, I don't want to niche just in procrastination. I want people to get
Oh.
this full life transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And the work that you and I did just really helped to tease that out.
And I would never say that you were a difficult client. You were amazing. Everyone's journey is different, and that's why I do longer term things like this, because it does take some people time to like tease it out, pull at the threads, figure out what the groove is going to be. But that's the work. And that's the work that pays you back
Yes.
versus just like I'm just going to dive straight in and I'm just going to do all of the things. Like we did the internal stuff, baby, and it was worth it.
Yes. Absolutely.
You could
Absolutely.
sum up your experience working with me in just a few sentences. What would those sentences be?
The sentences would be that it is a space where, one, you bring your expertise, but two, there's this real life energy about you where someone can actually open up and you can get to the core of what's going on underneath the issue of the messaging, because the messaging not being there is a symptom. It's a symptom. So you really, you're just grounded and it's real life, and this is what it is. And the other thing that I love about you is last year you had a lot of things going on in your life, and you held to your values of taking care of yourself first and making sure
Thank
your
you.
family was taken care of as well, which those are values of mine, which is why I've pivoted to training. But I think that that's important, is that you're not leading people to lead in their own business to an unrealistic standard.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you for saying that.
It's the truth.
Well, I appreciate it. Final question. What advice would you give someone who might be considering working with me?
I would say, if you're thinking about one on one, but you're unsure, definitely jump into one of the other containers, because I got to participate in Say This as a part of my one on one work. And it was just as potent and valuable as the one on one work together. And to just lean into that and pull the trigger, especially if you're wanting to just feel into and explore how to be yourself in your messaging, because that's the space that Brittany is going to hold, is for you to be yourself in your messaging. It's not about putting forth a facade of somebody or something that you're not, and you support that.
I feel like you articulated so well what I stand for right there. I might have to go back and listen and type out your quote right there because that was exactly what I hope to be bringing to the world. Penny, how can people find you? Because they should find you and connect with you because you're fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. I'm over on Instagram at penny.chaisson. I have a website, pennychaisson.com, or you can subscribe to the podcast, Penny on Your Thoughts.
Do you have any offers that you have right now you want to promote?
I have training coming up in July and October. The October training is weekends only. Early registration discount is open. These classes are kept small and intimate. So if becoming not necessarily a hypnotist. Usually people don't want to become a hypnotist. They want to create change and make an impact in the world. If
Mm.
that's something that's a passion of yours and you've wanted to explore that, reach out to me. I'll be happy to get you the details on that and share with you what's possible.
Amazing. I'll have all of Penny's links in the show notes. Penny, if you want to, once the live ends, if you want to go put all your links in the comments, go to town. Thank you for being here. I adore you. It's been such a pleasure talking with you today. I feel like it's been a minute since we got to connect. I just adore you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to get back to you in this way.
Thank you. All right, my friends, have an amazing rest of your week. I'll see you all later. Bye.